Welcome to Civics and Coffee, a history podcast, the show all about United States history, delivered to you in the time it takes to enjoy your morning cup of coffee. I'm your host, Alicia, a historian trained in United States history with a passion for telling both the known and unknown parts of America's past. So grab your coffee and get ready for some bite-sized history. Hey everyone, welcome back. A few weeks ago, I sat down with Dr. Elizabeth Block to discuss her new book, Gilded Age Fashions, which shines a light on the power of material culture during the era and how women, specifically upper class and overwhelmingly white women, used fashion to communicate their status. I remember that as I was reviewing Dr. Block's book, I was thinking about another status symbol of the Gilded Age, the mansion. The Gilded Age was an era known for conspicuous consumption, when men and women of means bought for the simple fact that they could. Material goods in this period communicated many things. They were often visual representations of status, prestige, and power. For women, their status was often transmitted via money spent at the finest dress shops and ordering the latest trends in fashion. As industries grew and propelled men into new heights of wealth and prosperity, they too sought ways to navigate this new world. And for many, they chose something much larger: property. These homes, filled with expensive antiques and priceless artwork, served as a way for newly wealthy individuals to demonstrate their place and try to convince the more established elites of society that their newfound wealth earned them a seat at the table. Building summer homes along the coasts of Rhode Island or erecting massive mansions along Fifth Avenue were not the only ways newly minted millionaires announced their wealth, but it was a significant part of the Gilded Age and one that remade parts of major cities like New York that it felt worthy of a research rabbit hole. So this week, I'm diving into the Gilded Age estate. What inspired these sprawling mansions? How did they differentiate from the homes of the elder elite? And how many homes remain? Grab your cup of coffee, peeps. Let's do this. As we hopefully know by now, the Gilded Age was a period of massive wealth accumulation. The United States enjoyed several years of industrial growth, thanks in part by new and developing technologies and access to vast amounts of natural resources. Magnates like Rockefeller, Carnegie, and Vanderbilt were all able to take advantage and amass incredible fortunes. This led to the question of what exactly to do with all that wealth. Many industrialists turned to funding public projects, testaments to their ability to give back and contribute to the public good that would outlive any frivolous purchase. These public projects were often a way for some to justify their excessive bank accounts and included cultural institutions like Carnegie Hall and educational centers like Vanderbilt University. This was part of what author Sean Dennis Cashman argues was a bit of an American Renaissance, first awakened during the Centennial Exhibition in Philadelphia in 1876. During the first part of this Renaissance, Cashman asserts there was a focus on recreating the beauty and influence of the European nations of the past. Thus, during the Gilded Age, several institutions were established to support the advancement of American art, including the National Sculpture Society in 1893 and the Society of Beaux Arts Architects in 1894. As Cashman argues, quote, art and architecture were central to the culture by way of public buildings, photographs, and exhibitions, end quote. So, how did the elite move from funding public projects to erecting palatial estates that would make even Jeff Bezos blush? While it may seem like a foregone conclusion to a 2026 audience, building a massive mansion to announce one's economic status was not something that was widely practiced, nor was it guaranteed to become something popular. In his book, Gilded Mansions, Wayne Craven argues that between 1855 and 1880, there was a debate among the newly wealthy as to what exactly the appropriate domestic backdrop for their kind looked like. There was awareness that Americans had long patterned themselves after Europeans in a variety of ways, but there remained some hesitation on the part of the new elite to mirror their architectural styling, at least for a while. Some of the hesitation could have stemmed from the desire to be accepted by the established families of society, those who may not have had the vast resources that came from striking it rich in oil, but whose lineage could be traced back to the founding of the country. As Craven asserts, quote, "The history of the American mansion as a large, stylish residence filled with rare furnishings and great works of art is one of evolution rather than revolution, and it is somewhat surprising that it took as long as it did to catch on." End quote. Ultimately, the deciding factor, it seems, came from the desire to entertain guests in the same vein as their aristocratic European neighbors. This meant oversized dining rooms that could host dozens of guests, ballrooms that could welcome hundreds of people, and plenty of art that could communicate to everyone exactly how much taste or wealth someone had. The problem with this was that these homes did not exist. They needed to be built. While several families erected large edifices, the Vanderbilts were prolific in their appetites for construction and were considered the perfect example of embracing the newest trends of Gilded Age real estate practices. And since they provide such luscious drama, I am limiting the scope of my episode here to several of their mansions and the indulgence that went into developing these major projects. They built 17 houses that cost over $1 million each, including the Biltmore, located in Asheville, North Carolina, that carried a price tag of $5 million. The Biltmore, which you can still visit today, took over 6 years to construct and is estimated to be over 175,000 square feet. It was erected using over 9 million pounds of Indiana limestone and includes over 700 windows and 74 doors. The sheer size of the property required hundreds of laborers, and building in North Carolina meant dealing with the racist job market, where Black employees were generally locked out of the higher skilled and thus higher paid positions. But that isn't the only home, nor the only drama, the Vanderbilts went through when building their real estate empire. Between 1878 and 1883, William Henry Vanderbilt and his son William Kissam Vanderbilt were engaged in dual development projects along Fifth Avenue in New York City. William Sr. employed a series of architects, Charles B. Atwood and the Herder brothers, to design and build his estate, which sat between 51st and 52nd Streets. Everything about the house screamed opulence. As was common for the era, each room was decorated in a completely different style. So, one room included imported cabinetry from France, while another room was finished in deep mahogany. The room included an atrium, which extended the full height of the building, as well as a courtyard and portico, since the residence was actually composed of two portions, a single family unit and a two-family unit. There was a large mantel carved out of African marble and a mosaic floor that was covered by a large carpet that had what was described as an Oriental design made in England. Everywhere guests looked, they'd see a sign of Vanderbilt wealth, including the fireplace, which was decorated in bronze. Not to be outdone, the younger William was also focused on erecting an architectural masterpiece to announce his arrival, or rather, his wife Alva was focused. As Wayne Craven outlines, quote, "The Fifth Avenue house from the beginning had to be special, a symbol of social primacy, of wealth, of power. It was, after all, to be the ram with which Alva was to attack the ramparts of Caroline Astor's social citadel." End quote. The development of the Petite Chateau, as the home was known, was completely overseen by Alva Vanderbilt, who saw the home as her entrance into New York society. Vanderbilt selected the design intentionally thanks to her love of France and departed from the standard brownstone exterior by selecting the gray toned Indiana limestone. While it was no doubt jarring to people on the street initially, Alva Vanderbilt proved to be a trendsetter, as Indiana limestone quickly became the fashionable building material in New York. Included in the home was a library made in the French Renaissance style, with walls lined with decorative wood paneling, which was taken from an actual French chateau from that period. The home also included something new for the Gilded Age: the billiard room. These new rooms, as Wayne Craven describes, were, quote, typically treated as exotic and masculine, a space to which men could comfortably withdraw to have cigars, brandy, and a round of billiards, while the ladies, after dinner, retired to elegant salons, end quote. The largest room in the Vanderbilt Chateau was their banquet hall, measuring 50 feet by 35 feet and measuring 2 stories high. Constructed in a Gothic style, the hall also doubled as a ballroom and included a large stained glass window for light. After spending a considerable amount of time, energy, and a great deal of money on building her chateau, Alva Vanderbilt wasted little time in planning an event that would give her an opportunity to showcase it to all of New York society. In fact, Mrs. Vanderbilt was so anxious to show off her house that she planned a costume ball on March 26, 1883, before the home was actually complete. She issued 1,000 invitations, and in a move that feels borrowed from a plotline in the popular HBO series named for the era, held back an invitation from Mrs. Astor's daughter. Only after Mrs. Astor called on Mrs. Vanderbilt did she actually extend an invite, essentially winning her entry into society as she had always planned. Of course, spending exorbitant amounts of money on building ornate and grand palatial homes was not necessarily a guarantee that one would be accepted. In May of 1881, the senior Vanderbilt learned the hard way that while money may have bought influence and power, it did not buy taste or acceptance. Upon inviting critics into his home, one wrote their house was, quote, the result of entrusting architectural design to decorators. It is hoped that the experiment may not be repeated, end quote. Reviewers were scathing in their critique, calling it incoherent and uninteresting. Men who had grown accustomed to bending the wills of politicians and boardrooms were likely unused to hearing any sort of negative feedback, and thus hearing criticism about something so personal as their home, something that they had built from scratch, was undoubtedly a hard pill to swallow. These homes were not only known for their ornate exteriors and beautiful architectural elements, they were also known for what was inside the four walls. As Sean Dennis Cashman explains, quote, to enrich their homes and give society notice of their new status, robber barons acquired paintings, sculptures, and manuscripts of great value, end quote. Industrialists imported art and paid top dollar for custom stained glass. They had ornate wall coverings and purchased the finest china. It was not enough to acquire these expensive and unique items. They needed to be displayed. Reviewing photos of Gilded Age homes, it is not uncommon to see rooms covered from floor to ceiling with works of art. And I literally mean floor to ceiling. Some of the photos I saw looked borderline like hoarders of the art world, but to each their own, I guess. Winning a bid to build a mansion or a summer compound for a robber baron could open the world for artists and architects of the Gilded Age. Therefore, it was absolutely critical that once invited to make a pitch, you left with the sale. Again, from Sean Dennis Cashman, quote, since it was the patrons of the late 19th century who held the keys to artistic success, designers and architects fully understood that they must be satisfied with the plans. Architects often submitted 2 different presentations for significant commissions, end quote. This includes when another member of the Vanderbilt family, Cornelius II, was looking to build his summer home in Newport, Rhode Island. Vanderbilt received 2 different designs for the home, known as the Breakers, and selected his preference for construction. And while this episode has focused on New York, Gilded Age mansions and estates were built throughout the country: Kentucky, Colorado, Alabama, California. Wherever there was an opportunity to accumulate a massive sum of money, you can bet there was at least one palatial home or compound. You can still see remnants of Gilded Age mansions today. Many of the remaining estates are clustered in the Northeast, but there are several peppered throughout the country. As I mentioned earlier, you can still visit the largest one of them all, the Biltmore, located in North Carolina, and others remain open as house museums for the general public. Unfortunately, many that were built in San Francisco were destroyed in the 1906 earthquake, but there is one still standing right here where I live in Northern California, although it doesn't appear to be open to the public at the moment. Like the custom-made dresses women spent hours fretting over and changing into, the mansions of the Gilded Age were symbols, tools to communicate status and an individual's place among society. Emulating their European neighbors overseas, the new American elite erected their version of palaces and chateaus and filled the walls with art imported from all over the world. Each decision, from the tapestry to the flooring, was intentional and meant to convey their taste and communicate their power. I hope you enjoyed this little jaunt into the material culture of the Gilded Age. Be sure to tune in next week where I will resume my deep dives into the political corruption and exploits of the elites that helped make the Gilded Age one of the most fascinating periods in history. And don't forget, my inbox remains open for your topic suggestions. I love fielding your requests, and I believe I have some of the smartest listeners around. And you always challenge me to go on some deep research rabbit holes. You can always submit your requests through any of the social channels or via the website at www.civicsandcoffee.com. Thanks, peeps. I'll see you next time.
Thanks for sitting down with me as I explored this chapter of American history. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe and share with your friends. I look forward to our next cup of coffee together.